Deep within a starlit forest, hidden under the roots of a giant, moss-covered mushroom, lay the peaceful gnome village of Glowing Glen. Here, every gnome had a unique skill, except for one young gnome, named Norman, while his friends and neighbors carved shining tools and sturdy furniture from rock and earth. Norman could coax strange plants to grow, plants that glowed with a soft, gentle light. He loved tending to these luminescent herbs, flowers and vines, but he felt his talent wasn't as strong or useful as the gnome's traditional skills. He dreamed of becoming a brave miner like the rest of them, delving deep into the earth and bringing precious gems to the surface. But Norman's attempts at mining always ended in disaster. He'd accidentally unearth pockets of air, collapse tunnels, or unearth glowing mushrooms instead of gems. So Norman spent his days in his garden, dreaming of adventures he'd never have. One day, while Norman was watering his moon-kissed morning glory, he heard an urgent shout from the village. Startled, he dropped his watering can and hurried toward the commotion. In the center of town sat the gnome's most prized possession, the shimmering gemstone, a massive crystal that pulsed with starlight and kept the village brightly lit at night. But now the gemstone was strangely dim, its light growing weaker and weaker. The normally cheerful gnomes were scared and confused, their faces pale in the fading light. "What's happening to our light?" they cried. The elder gnome held up his gnarled hands for silence. "I don't know," he admitted, his voice shaking. "Our light is fading and we don't know why or how to fix it. Without our light, we'll be lost." Norman felt a pang of sympathy for his friends. He knew how important the shimmering gemstone was to them. It wasn't just a source of light, it was a symbol of their strength and unity. But then Norman noticed something strange. As the gemstone's light faded, the shadows seemed deeper, the night colder. Looking up at the sky, he realized that tonight was the night of whispering stars, when the veil between the mortal world and the spirit realm was at its thinnest. "I think I know what's happening," Norman said, surprising himself. No one paid any attention to him before, but his friends looked to him now with desperate hope in their eyes. "We're sensing the same thing, Norman," said his best friend Gerd, a stout, young gnome with a pickaxe slung over his shoulder. "What do we do?" Norman took a deep breath. Although his heart pounded with fear, he knew he had to be brave.
"I might be able to help,"
he said, surprising himself again. He remembered his mentor, an eccentric traveling gnome, who taught him about the balance of light and dark in the natural world. The mentor spoke of a place where the boundary between light and dark is thin, a place where even the smallest light can make a big difference, Norman explained. But this dangerous place is also filled with creatures of shadow and nightmare, creatures that would devour any light they come across. Norman hesitated. "It's a long and dangerous journey," he admitted, "but someone has to try." Taking a small bag of his special glowing seeds, Norman set off into the night. "Be careful, Norman," Gerd called after him. "Bring back our light?" Norman nodded, though he wasn't sure if he would. All around him, gnarled trees clawed at the sky, their branches tangled in a silent dance. Strange shapes flickered in the darkness, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to writhe like a sleeping beast. But Norman pressed on, his small bag of seeds a heavy weight on his back. His only guide was the tiny, faint glow from his own plants, which seemed to pulse in time with the fading light of the shimmering gemstone. Suddenly, a guttural voice boomed through the forest. "What light dares disturb my slumber?" Norman froze, his heart pounding like a drum. A huge forest troll was lumbering toward him, its eyes like burning embers in the darkness. Slowly, Norman raised his plants, their gentle glow making the troll squint. "Easy, oh, Rocky Mountain," Norman said, trying to sound brave. "I mean you no harm. I just need to get past you to the hotwood tree at the center of the forest." The troll grunted, its thick fingers flexing. "No one has passed this way for many years. Why should I let you pass?" "Because," Norman said softly, stepping closer to the troll, "you are lonely and tired, and I have just the thing to help you rest." The troll's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Norman planted a small cluster of moon-kissed morning glory at the base of the troll's favorite boulder, the ones he used to sit on. The troll hesitated, then lowered himself onto the rock. and as soon as he did, the flowers began to glow, bathing him in a soft, warm light. "What's this magic?" the troll asked, his voice softer now. "I call them moon-kissed morning glories," Norman replied, smiling. "They bring gentle light to those who need it in the darkness." The troll sighed contentedly. "This is the first bit of light I've seen in hundreds of years." "Thank you, little gnome." "Of course," Norman said, bowing slightly. "Now, if you don't mind, I must be on my way." The troll waved a lazy hand. "Go, little gnome. May your light bring more joy to this dark forest." And so Norman continued on his way, his small light guiding him deeper into the forest. At last, he saw it, the heartwood tree, its branches reaching toward the sky like supplicating arms. But as Norman approached, he sensed a deep sadness emanating from the tree, a loneliness so profound it made his heart ache. At the base of the tree lived a wise old squirrel who'd been a friend to Norman S. Mentor. Seeing the young gnome, she chittered softly. "Why does the tree look so sad?" Norman asked. "The tree is losing its light, little gnome," the squirrel replied, her voice as thin and reedy as a twig. "And without light, the tree will wither and die. How can I help?" Norman asked, remembering the shimmering gemstone's fading light. Suddenly, he understood. The shimmering gemstone was connected to the heartwood tree by an ancient magic, and the tree's own light was fading, sapping the gemstone of its power. "Do you know what the tree needs?" Norman asked, reaching for his bag of seeds. "Something to bring light to the darkness, something to chase away the shadows." "Can you help the tree, little gnome?" Norman smiled, a sudden surge of bravery warming him from the inside out. He planted a circle of his most radiant flowers around the base of the tree, along with clusters of glowing vines and herbs. Then he stood back and watched as they took root in the soft earth, drank in the moonlight, and began to glow with a soft, gentle radiance. As the plants grew, they hummed with a quiet energy that seemed to call to the heartwood tree. Tiny roots unfurled from the tree's base and reached for the plants, wrapping themselves around the stems and drinking in the light. Encouraged, Norman planted more glowing plants, each one radiating a unique kind of light. As the roots spread, they wove a network of living light that hummed with power. And then, as if guided by some unseen force, the roots began to move, traveling under the earth toward the distant light of the shimmering gemstone. Soon, the entire forest floor was ablaze with light as Norman's plants blossomed, their roots connecting with the tree's magic and sending a wave of energy surging through the earth. And then Norman saw it, a flicker of light in the distance. The shimmering gemstone was waking from its slumber. The light grew stronger, spreading warmth and cheer to every corner of Glowing Glen. Cheers echoed through the forest as the other gnomes saw the returning light and followed the trail of glowing plants to Norman and his blooming garden. "You brought back our light!" they cried, their faces aglow with gratitude and wonder. "You saved us, Norman." Norman blushed, feeling the pride of his friends warm him more than any cool fire could. He might not be the strongest or the bravest gnome in Glowing Glen, but he was the Glow Gardener, the hero who saved his people by embracing his unique talent and bringing light to the darkest places. From that day on, Norman's plants were celebrated throughout the land, and he became known as the gardener who could grow Starlight. And whenever the gnomes felt afraid or lost in the darkness, they looked to Norman and his glowing garden for inspiration, knowing that even the smallest light can make the biggest difference.